So if you're choosing data from Gapminder, then you go to gapminder.org/data, or you can just search Gapminder data in Google and it takes you to this page. On here, you have a huge wealth of information and for data. So it will open up, I think, for everyone on life expectancy at birth. So if you click on this, or if you have a different variable open, then you can click on it. And on here, you'll see there is a lot of data available. So for example, within economy, you've then got sectors of work, poverty, inequality. So you've got huge amounts of data. So let's imagine we're taking GDP per capita. So I can search for this here. You can also search if there's something you want, like happiness index, for example, you can find it. Once you have the right data variable selected, you'll see you've got most countries in the world and you've got a lot of different dates. So we can scroll across to a more recent date. Sometimes there are also predictions into the future, like this one has, which you probably want to stay clear of on an IA. So for example, let's say you want to take 2024 or 2025 as your data set. You are then going to select this button here, which means that it's going to download it as an Excel spreadsheet. So if we select this button, and we can download, and from here we can then open this as a spreadsheet. So you're just going to click that download and open it up. So you can see here, this is the data. I've now opened up that spreadsheet. I've got the country code, then the country written down, and then all of these different dates. Now, obviously this is a huge amount of data and way too much for me to even begin processing, in which case you can just highlight the country. So we can take that whole section and we can then put this into a spreadsheet. So this is the countries. Let's make this bold. And we can then go back to our spreadsheet, and for example, we can just take 2000 and let's say 2025. So we're just going to copy that in and put this into our spreadsheet. So we have 2025. Now my variable is obviously gone, so I'm just going to put GDP per capita, because when I add a second variable in, I don't want to find that I don't know which is which. So now I have all of these countries with a lot of data. Okay, and it looks like in total, I can see I have 193 pieces of data, because the first one is obviously the name. And now I'm going to go back to my Gapminder and I'm going to choose my second variable. So let's, for example, say we're going to choose the happiness score, and we're going to see if the GDP and the happiness have a connection. So again, we're going to click on the Excel and we're going to download the data. So we now have, again, a list of countries, and we're going to put this into our spreadsheet. And we also have our list of data. So let's maybe take 2023. Now, I really should have looked at both and maybe took both years for 2023. So you should really try to justify or explain why you've taken what years. It perhaps makes more sense to have took a GDP earlier than happiness, because maybe the amount of money you got makes you happy or not happy the year after or something. So I should have thought a bit about which data I'm going to take for which year. But I'm just going to leave it like this for now for these purposes. So this is the happiness data. Now you can see some of the data I don't have information for. So this is where you've now got to try and align your data. So for the first country, I can see that the happiness is there, and I can just pull that straight across. And then the next one I have is Albania, and you can see now that this category has Andorra and this one doesn't. So this is where you can't just copy everything directly in. So Albania, and then UAE, that goes into the one below, and then I have Argentina, and you can see the next couple of countries are the same, so I can just paste those in there. I should probably cut them so I know I've used them. And then Australia, Austria, Azerbaijan, so I could copy all of those into this section here, and so on. Once you've finished that, and you're going to do that for the whole list of data, you can then remove any that you don't have two pieces of information for. So at the moment, for example, we don't need this anymore. Let's imagine we've finished this and we've copied all our data across. You can then delete any countries that don't have full data sets. So you're going to want to delete those rows so that every country in your list has two pieces of information. Once you've done that, you can either decide to use however big that list is, and you can explain that you used a convenience sample and you have taken the data that was available from each one. You've made sure they had two sets of data and then you've taken that as your sample. Or if it still feels quite long, you can then choose your sampling technique. So maybe you want to take a mixture of lower economically developed countries and higher economically developed countries. Maybe you want to take a random sample, so you're just going to take like every fourth. So the first one and then miss a couple and take the next one. Maybe these will be your sample. So it's up to you what you take, but you need to justify your sampling method. And then from there, you would then have your complete list. So that's the way that you would collect data if it's from Gapminder. So once you have your data organized and it's you've got your two lists of data and you've taken your sample and everything else, the other thing that you might want to use is, if we go into data, we can create a filter. So it doesn't actually matter where you're clicking when you do that, but it's data and create filter. And this will change each of your headings into like a main title that you can then organize the data with. So for now, I could go into the GDP per capita, for example, organize it A to Z, and that means that it will give me the lowest all the way up to the largest value. It will keep each kind of triple of data together. So this will stay with this, which will stay with this. It's not going to just move one category, which would happen if you did it through here. Instead, because we've created a filter, it's jumbling them all at the same time. So it can be quite useful if you're then going to use Spearman's rank, or if you want to take as your sample, for example, a bottom few and a middle few or whatever else. And then you can do the same for the other one. And again, you can put them in numerical order, and then you can take a sample or whatever it is that you might want to do.